I am officially calling to order the annual meeting of the Watershed Institute at 6:03. Welcome to the Watershed Reserve on this chilly April afternoon. We were hoping that it was going to be a warm, balmy day, but the weather gods clearly did not oblige. But we are fellow watershed folks and are sturdy and hardy, and if for some reason you get a little bit colder, we have some of those wonderful blankets from the fest that that are right up front, and please help yourself. We're outside at this wonderful, beautiful spot and together at last after 3 years of virtual gatherings. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces here today. Many of you have been supporters for decades and decades. I'd also like to warmly welcome those of you that might be new to the area or new to the organization. I'm honored to be able to recognize several important leaders from our area who are with us today. Paul Anzano, who's the mayor of Hopewell Borough. Thank you. Andrew Nowick, who's the mayor of Lambertville. Thank you for coming. And Courtney Peters Manning, who's the mayor of Hopewell Township. Thank you for joining us. We have a terrific agenda ahead of us today. We'll hear remarks from our guest speaker, Sean LaTourette, who's NJDEP Commissioner, Jim Waltman, our Executive Director on the state of the watershed. We will bestow 3 awards that recognize excellence in environmental work. We'll elect our new trustees, and finally thank our retiring trustees for their service. We come together here on these ancient and precious lands as the shad bush blooms that signals the return of the shad to the local waterways and the Delaware River. As the trout lily sports its ephemeral yellow trumpets above the mottled leaves along our rushing brooks, and which marks the return, we hope, of trout to our waters. And as the spring peepers, those sticky-toed frogs that love the marshes and wetland spots, and let us know with their incessant peeping that the vernal ponds and marshes are teeming with life. These harbingers of spring were noted and celebrated by the Lenni Lenape, whose land we now steward. This land is part of their homeland and ancestral territory. We honor Lenape peoples, past, present, and future, for their knowledge, culture, traditions, and leadership in land and water conservation. The shad tree and the shad, the trout lily and the trout, and the peepers and their habitat can only survive if our wetlands, streams, and rivers are clean and healthy. These dependable signs of the change of season have been so for generations, but are not guaranteed to exist going forward if we do not protect our habitats and climate. And this interconnectedness of our ecosystem is at the heart of our mission here. Keeping water clean, safe, and healthy. We work to protect and restore our water and natural environment in central New Jersey through conservation, advocacy, science, and education. The last 2 years have been challenging for all of us, but out of that challenge, some significant projects have been undertaken at the watershed, which are quite remarkable. New partnerships have been forged, financial support has increased dramatically, and the institution is now the go-to resource in our region, both at our state-of-the-art center here and out on the road. We are broadening our scope of work with communities, towns, and cities to mitigate flooding and address polluted water runoff. We are teaching about ways to ensure adequate water supplies in times of scarcity as well as plenty, which entails considering how to maintain productive aquifers and ways to protect the quality of surface and groundwater. We are responding to climate change through education, design, and implementation of stream buffers, rain gardens, floating wetlands, tree planting, and other types of innovative green infrastructure in neighboring towns and here on the reserve. We've been opposing pipelines and conserving critical land. We've been empowering action through advocacy and education. We are a resource for helping citizens enact change in their communities, and so we acknowledge that our essential mission has special urgency in some parts of our region. We know from several studies, for example, that neighborhoods that were historically denied loans or insurance based on race or ethnicity are statistically more prone to flooding and have less tree cover, which can lead to more heat-related illness. The watershed is committed to understanding and addressing such historic inequities. So 2022 has been an exciting year so far. But on top of that, in our January meeting, the Board of Trustees committed significant resources to a 3-year plan to do 4 things. 1, launch a new Stream Watch water monitoring program with schools in our region, and Jim will tell you a lot more about that. It's incredibly exciting. 2, complete the long-awaited outdoor children nature play area, which will be right behind the butterfly house off the boardwalk, and add new interactive exhibits inside the center. We will model environmental sustainable practices at a higher level and reduce our carbon footprint on the reserve in our buildings, our equipment, through technology, meadows, woodlands, and fields. And finally, in collaboration with our partners, install green infrastructure projects in Trenton that address flooding, heat island effect, and community health concerns focused on the communities around the Asapink Creek. Jim and his staff have been working tirelessly during these challenging times to continue to advance the organization and reach more communities in our region and have greater measurable impact. I'm in awe of their fortitude, resilience, creativity, and optimism. And I speak for the board when I say that we are inspired by the talented people who work at the watershed and are very grateful to have them doing this very critical work. So I would like to now introduce Jim Waltman, the Watershed Institute's Executive Director, who will introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Barbie, and thanks to all of you for coming out tonight, and thanks for your support through the years. You are enabling a lot of incredibly important and wonderful work. But I have a great joy and honor right now to introduce tonight's speaker. In our efforts to keep water clean, safe, and healthy, the watershed has no more important partner than the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection.